Home and Away spoilers: Summer Bay mourns as Felicity's death confirmed. Next week on Home and Away in the UK, Felicity is rushed to hospital following her collapse, but a devastating diagnosis floors her loved ones. Summer Bay is reeling next week following the shock collapse of Felicity in Salt. Flick had just spent the afternoon throwing a surprise engagement party for brother Cash and bestie Eden down on the beach. As the loved-up couple spent the afternoon dancing away, Flick found herself in the company of ex-husband Tane, with it looking as though a rekindling of their romance could be on the cards. As the celebrations wound down and a select few remained at Salt, Cash and Flick were reflective as he thanked her for the party. "Maybe we're not cursed," Flick observed after their years of bad luck. "We deserve to be happy. And I have a feeling we're gonna be." However, as Flick invited Tane for one last dance, her vision began to blur as she experienced a searing pain at the side of her head. Losing consciousness, Flick collapsed to the floor in front of her shocked loved ones. As we return to the scene next week, Flick is rushed into hospital where Bree organizes an urgent brain court, noting that one of Flick's pupils is dilated. When the results come back, Bree delivers the grave news to Cash, Eden and Tane that Flick has suffered a brain aneurysm. She goes on to explain that a neurosurgeon is going to attempt to clip the aneurysm and prevent further bleeding. But Bree warns them that if Flick survives, she could be left with irreversible brain damage. Later that night, Bree returns to say the surgery was successful, but the bleed was substantial and the next few days will be critical. Cash and Eden are led through to Flick's room where she lays unconscious and hooked up to numerous machines. After Cash begins a bedside vigil for his sister, Eden later suggests he nips home whilst the doctors are doing their rounds in order to get a change of clothes. But Cash states that he isn't going anywhere. As Eden heads home to pick some up, she bumps into brother Levi, who offers to give her a lift. Levi is surprised when Eden accepts, the situation with Flick seemingly putting their own issues into perspective. Cash continues his waiting game as Bree does her rounds and informs him there's been no change with Flick's condition. However, right on cue, the alarms on the machines begin blaring as Bree observes that the pressure within Flick's head is dangerously increasing. Cash is ushered outside as the medical team descend. As an overwhelmed Cash waits outside, Tane returns to the hospital having heard that Flick was apparently doing well. "It's bad," Cash says on the verge of tears. Levi heads in to assist Bree, who thinks Flick may have had a secondary bleed. Bree explains that her pupils are fixed and dilated and she had made no attempts to breathe on her own when they attempted to reduce sedation. Levi runs his pen along Flick's foot, a standard neurological test, but both are hugely concerned when there's no reflex reaction. The tests only confirm their worst fears, as Bree and Levi explain to Cash that Flick has suffered a second bleed, one which cannot be fixed with surgery. Unfortunately, there is nothing else that can be done. And with a heavy heart, Bree informs Cash that all indications appear to show that Flick is now brain dead. She goes on to explain that two doctors will each have to carry their own neurological tests in order to confirm. But at this stage it is just protocol. Nevertheless, Cash remains hopeful that Flick will pull through. Sadly, the first assessment goes as expected, the conclusion being that Flick has no brain activity, although Cash is determined that the second test could still show different. Levi quietly confirms to the others that they will be just the same after such a catastrophic bleed. Cash stays in Flick's room for the second assessment, but is devastated as he sees the lack of response from his sister, willing her to breathe when the ventilator is again turned off. As Bree turns it back on, she confirms that the tests are now complete. Flick is gone. As Bree gently explains that they now need to consider when they turn the life support off. Cash cannot bring himself to even think about it, adamant that it's not going to happen. Meanwhile, as the sad news filters around Summer Bay, Tane is feeling uncertain of his place. Being Flick's ex-husband, he didn't feel comfortable being at the hospital alongside her loved ones. Marley urges Tane to go to the hospital, even if it's only to support Cash. But Tane claims that he has too many responsibilities, including a business to run. Unaware of the situation, Perra is starting to become frustrated with a distracted Tane, as he tries to talk to him about his reading and writing assessments that show he may be dyslexic. Tane apologizes and continues to hide the truth about Flick, stating that he's just thinking about work stuff, and promises to give him his full attention. As Tane continues to be reminded of Flick everywhere he goes, Perry believes that he's done something to upset him, leaving Harper to explain what's actually going on. In the end, it is Perry who convinces Tane that he needs to be at Northern Districts, explaining that he never got a chance to say goodbye to his mum, and that Tane will regret not taking that chance. When he finally does return, he finds Cash still at Flick's bedside, patiently waiting for her to wake up. Tane gently tells him that it will never happen, and that Flick wouldn't want to be kept here like this. Only the machines keeping her body alive. With Cash finally accepting that his sister is gone, Bree arrives with a social worker, Tom, and asks Cash whether Flick had ever spoken about donating her organs. Although she had not, Cash looks to Eden for advice. When I think about her heart beating in someone else, someone who can dance and love someone who can maybe torment their big brother, that sounds pretty good to me. Eden suggests. Cash agrees that Flick would like that, and signs the consent forms. When Flick is later prepared for the surgery, the hospital staff form a walk of honor, lining the corridor as she is wheeled out of the ward. Cash, Eden and Tane all say an emotional goodbye one final time. Later that day, Flick's body is returned so her loved ones can have some final moments with her. Left alone with his sister, Cash tells her that she's now back with her mum and dad like she always wanted, tearfully placing their mum's necklace on her. Sleep well, little sister, Cash tells her, as he holds her hand and breaks down. Back in the bay, Perry watches Tane as he performs an emotional haka to help process his grief. Will Cash, Eden and Tane be able to support each other as they struggle to cope with Flick's passing?